up? Welcome to the Marsh Pod, part 2 of our two-part series, if you will, profiling what teams really need to be, in my opinion, my humble opinion, what teams need to be looking for here as we are now just a couple more days removed. Of course, next Monday, recruiting begins. Teams, we've done that early commitment time period, and now we're looking at what teams are going to do or what teams might want to do come recruiting opening up. Second part, first two parts, we profiled Cascadia and Southeast Select. This time we're going to do Lakeshore Drive, who have their new head coach, Brian Lovelace, who I know I spoke about a couple weeks ago about not being sold on this being the best marriage, considering all that Lovelace accomplished last season with the Bay Area Breakers. And then the Yacht Club, who's actually in a very interesting position. They make an impressive run to the championship game, pulled off an upset of Gotham 5. But they lose their head coach, Chad Smith, for reasons that still haven't quite come out. I've heard some rumblings, but not enough to really report on exactly how that came to be. But that puts them in a tough spot, so we might as well just start with them. Without a head coach, they are in a very dangerous spot, and by they, I truthfully mean the players. And this isn't a team that's devoid of talent. They do have, in my opinion, at least one very, very good player. And as we go through those five, again, playmaking, shooting, perimeter defense, interior defense, athleticism, Dominic Bianco is a name to keep an eye on, not only here for Yacht Club, but he last season showed an incredible ability to be part of a two-headed backcourt with Yacht Club. He's a great playmaker. He's a very good athlete. Both of those, I know I'm kind of jumping the gun on how we get to those, but if I'm another team, that's a name, Dominic Bianco, who I don't know that he's at Yacht Club to start the season. I really don't. This is free game. There's no reason, and we talked about it last time, Brad Lee went into South Florida and took out two guys from the Yacht Club's domain. How much that is due to them not having a head coach currently to be able to retain some of that talent, the players would really be the only ones to answer that question. But this is another name in Dominic Bianco I think is prime for the picking. That's not reporting. Aggregators, be wary. I am not saying that he is leaving. I'm just saying without a head coach, they're already in a precarious position, and Dominic Bianco should be a name that other coaches try to poach out of South Florida. If he were to stay, him and Kenny Twyman also returning, make up a pretty good playmaking base. Again, we talked on Tuesday. So long as these teams have two people on their roster that are good at any of those five main pieces, they're okay. They're not great. There's plenty of work to be done, but it's better than starting one or even better than zero. They have two playmakers. Bianco has proven he can be a good playmaker. It's a good place to start for them. Moving to shooting, they've got a pair of good ones coming in. Colton McCary II and Style Jalelo. Not sure how we're getting these names, but there we are. Good shooting. Unproven. We haven't seen what they can do, but from a starting point, Yacht Club, even without a head coach, has to feel pretty confident as an organization that they can step in and they can be competitive with that type of combination of playmaking and shooting right off the bat. That extends to perimeter defense, where they've got Kyron Bello, 6'2" guard out of Miami. He's a really good really good perimeter defender. That's a nice starting point. You start getting with this group, you start looking at it right now, you say, look, we compare Bianco with Bello and McCary II. Now we're in a good spot with playmaking, defense, and shooting. We have options at all those positions. Throw in Rizzo Davis Wrightsil, who's a really good athlete, and I'm going to move over to interior defense. He's their lone good interior defender. That starts to make sense from a starting four. Right, you've got Davis Wrightsil, who's a great vertical threat. You've got Dominic Bianco, who's a very quick twitch athlete. I actually really like where Yacht Club's at. I think from all the teams that are missing a coach, I think Yacht Club is actually in a really unique position where players are going to want to play in Miami. Okay, players that are outside of the state of Florida are going to want to play Miami. We've seen that the state barriers do not really impact a lot of teams, with heck players leaving Miami being the prime example of that. If they can land a coach that understands the type of system that he wants to run, and or, which I think would be a better move, is have a system that can take advantage of the pieces he's got. Kyron Bello is a pretty good athlete as well. They could have a really good starting force, throw in who you want at the 5, that they start making a lot of noise down in Miami. Second one, Lakeshore Drive. Brian Loveless, I told you I wasn't in love with how he did last season in the Bay Area, but I think he's got a good starting point. Now, he's going to need to make some type of changes because his approach last season was basically cadence ship, let's run it around the star. And as I already talked about, I won't reiterate it too much, he's basically walking into the essentially same exact team in Chicago that he had over in Oakland. But he's got a good foundation. Chris Campbell, Drake Harvell, Jamal Harper all return. That's your 1-2-3. You want to talk about the Yacht Club having a potential 1-2-3 of Bianco, McCary II, and Bello? He's got that. Loveless does with Lakeshore Drive with Campbell, Harvell, and Harper. Playmaking, Campbell's their one guy, but they're also bringing in a nice new wing, Anwar Ukuhart B. That's a nice wrinkle, especially getting a playmaker on the perimeter, not necessarily only having to go through the guards. I think what we saw last season was teams that were successful, they had multiple layers of which the ball could flow and operate through, and immediately Lakeshore Drive has that as a potential option. Shooting, Harvell is by far and away the most talented of them, maybe one of the best shooters in SimWorld Hoops, second to Trey Turner. Where you put 2, 3, 4 along the line, Harvell's at least talented, but they're all playing catch up to Turner. They also bring in a nice new big, Torrin Trigg Jr. Stretch big could give them a really nice wrinkle to say, let's spread this out, because skipping a couple, Jamal Harper is a phenomenal 3, well, not really 3, but athletic and defensive wing. Kind of profiles currently in that Tony Allen type of very hounding on the defensive side of the ball, but very springy athlete that can be disruptive on the other end. That is now a very good option when you enter a Torrin Trigg Jr., who's a stretch 5. No longer is a guy like Harper who thrives off ball, who thrives cutting to the rim. He's not now going to be running into a paint, in theory, that is congested because they have a paint-bound big in the center of it. Trigg Jr. is a good stretch option for them, along with Harvell. Already talked on perimeter defense, but Harper's really their only option there. So you'd like to see a little bit of improvement, but it's, again, not a bad start if you try to start building out, hey, what does this look like that could potentially be an option. Moving to interior defense, Lath Money. Again, these names, I tell you what, he's a wing, but he's a really good interior defender, and I think that gives them an option where you start building out, what does this 5 look like? I think it's Campbell and Harvell on the perimeter. It's Jamal Harper, who's a great perimeter defender, with Lath Money as a very talented interior defender at the wings, and then Torrin Trigg Jr. as a stretch 5. That's a starting 5. Okay, now what Brian Loveless chooses to do with it remains to be seen, but you can envision a 4-out system that allows them to take advantage of an athletic Harper, a stretch big in Trigg Jr., a good playmaker in Chris Campbell, and then a stretch wing in Harvell on the perimeter. It starts to get really dangerous for Lakeshore Drive, to the point that they start climbing up, in my opinion. Hey, their run to the championship game shouldn't be all that surprising, considering the pieces that they have. They're going to have to replace Gerald Carroll. That was a big loss for them on the perimeter, especially on shooting. And I'm not saying Torrin Trigg Jr. is going to walk in and do that. I think there's room for them to improve. Perimeter defense, they need to add something. You'd like to see a little bit more shooting options. At the wing, specifically, relying on a stretch big to be your guy isn't a great option. But there's an outline for Lakeshore Drive for them to be really dangerous. All right, that's it for us. We'll check back with you guys on Tuesday. Thanks as always.